You ever wonder how people like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger stayed cognitively sharp enough in their 90s to outinvest and outmaneuver counterparts decades younger? And no, it definitely wasn't their exercise protocol or eating habits, which makes it even more impressive. What these two kept that most others their age don't is constant cognitive stimulation driven by something that they truly love to do. Something challenging yet rewarding, keeping neurons engaged, pathways intact, and, dare I say, even growing. All while staying engaged with a social community they care about. In this case, their investors. Thus, filling the buckets of both connection and purpose. And despite their not so great habits in other areas, like Buffett's McDonald's and Coca-Cola tendencies, their minds endured well past the average humans. And yes, this is just a high-level theory, of course, from a distant observer, but a high-level theory which is also backed up by some new, super interesting data. Here's why you should stay mentally stimulated and socially connected if you don't want to be like the average human and stay sharp as a tack into your golden years. Let's go. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run LiftandBalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Now, for any person who is well into adulting, it is no surprise that a once vibrant social network tends to gradually diminish as they accumulate chronological years on this beautiful floating rock. But truth is, that's chimp change compared to the dramatic drop most people experience in their 60s and 70s, as the combo of retirement, older kids, and loss of loved ones slowly but surely moves most into a increasingly socially isolated life, and oftentimes less cognitively stimulating one too. All of a sudden, there's no more tough work problems to solve, less family logistics string boards to coordinate, and gone are the days both you and your kids struggle to do their homework, and out of nowhere, it's just you, and the price is right. Which, to its credit, is probably one of the better cognitively stimulating options if you're going to watch daytime TV. And here's the thing. New data is hinting that this lack of stimulation can team up with social isolation and loneliness to accelerate something we all don't want accelerated: cognitive decline. Thus, towards the end of this powwow, we're going to talk about ways you can start planning your counterattack for cognitive preservation. Because as alluded to, these issues are only going to become more and more common, as it is estimated that approximately 25% of older individuals in the US are socially isolated, while the prevalence of this phenomena in Europe is around 22%. And on the loneliness front, a large meta-analysis out of the EU reported that it affects between 6 and 25% of older adults, depending on the region. With these numbers expected to get worse as the aging population, well, ages. And in case you were wondering if there's a health impact to all this, there seems to be, as data has displayed that social isolation has been associated to poorer mental health and cardiovascular outcomes, while loneliness, which can vary depending on the duration and context, has been linked to a higher risk of all-cause mortality. There's even data that suggests that individuals with limited social relationships or unsatisfying ones endure an increased magnitude of mortality risk comparable to tobacco use. Crazy, I know, and making me think I should probably get out of my basement a little more. But at least I have you, production team. They may or may not be imaginary. Which tees us up for this new hot off the scientific street study, which looked at what may worsen or improve these cognitive impacts. And to do this, researchers out of the University of Geneva analyzed data from 33,000 older adults across Europe who participated in the SHARE study, examining the impact of less sensory stimulation, social isolation, and loneliness on memory. And in this case, the sensory stimuli they look at is one that all of us take for granted, and one which many people begin to lose right around this golden year's time: hearing. which more than 25% of people over the age of 60 begin to lose in a disabling way. And something that the WHO estimates that nearly 2.5 billion people will experience by 2050. Yikes is right. Or, I guess, is righter. And the interesting part of hearing loss in this context is the fact that it makes social connection and interaction even more difficult, while also slowly but surely depriving one's sensory-loving neurons of their fix. And according to the data, significantly increasing one's risk of cognitive decline later in life. So researchers from this study identified 3 distinct profiles to explore these impacts. First, individuals who are both socially isolated and feel lonely. Second, individuals who are not socially isolated but still feel lonely. And third, individuals who are socially isolated but do not feel lonely, analyzing how the decreased ability to hear affected each group's cognitive function. In particular, memory. Pretty interesting, right? Let's see what they found. First, they observed that individuals in more socially disadvantaged groups, particularly those who were both isolated and lonely, consistently performed worse across all cognitive domains compared to those in the non-isolated and non-lonely profile, supporting the argument that both objective and subjective social disconnection are relevant to cognitive outcomes and may jointly contribute to risk. However, the key finding was that those who were both socially isolated and lonely showed poorer cognitive performance and steeper cognitive decline as hearing impairment worsened. In other words, social isolation and deafness acted as an explosive cocktail for cognitive decline. 2 things, might I add, that the average aging person faces. Now, even though this was solely observational data and no causal link was established nor sought, the association is quite interesting, highlighting how a perfect storm of biological, demographic, and social factors may very well be working together to accelerate cognitive decline as we age, and ultimately stealing away more healthy years of life, which is a longevity shame, and something we should all be starting our battle against today. Here are some things to think about. And I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of levers to pull here, which is a good thing. So we're gonna focus in on some of the most impactful and or low-hanging fruit. First being the importance of protecting your biological assets, aka your body, especially key sensory components such as your eyes and ears, because you'd be amazed how active those 2 inputs keep your neurons, and thus help keep your 5-pound mushy membrane well oiled. So be a little more cautious before you blast loud music into your headphones, or go to your 5th rave in 5 nights, and make an effort to protect them with things like earmuffs, earplugs, and glasses, especially if you work a loud, busy job. Or even just stare at a computer all day, where things like blue light blocking glasses come in pretty handy. And if you currently have hearing or eye problems and are being a stubborn holdout for things like hearing aids, stop being silly. Swallow that pride for the preservation of your cognition already. Let the technology help you keep your wits. And speaking of going out and getting a little uncomfortable, you should also aim to do just that. Naturally finding and engaging in cognitively stimulating activities with people who have similar interests as you. Whether it be a run or bike club, a pickup sport, going to the gym, painting, dancing, gardening clubs, picking up an instrument, church groups, participating in who knows what at your local library. A lot of cool activities there, if you didn't know. And don't you think starting a Lego enthusiast or Star Wars fan club doesn't count either? It does. The moral of the story is to keep flexing that social butterfly muscle all throughout life, because it most likely ain't gonna get easier as you age. And if you find yourself entrenched in family life or constantly running the kids around, use that as an opportunity to meet and establish relationships with other parents Multitasking 101. I can speak from firsthand experience that all of my friends' parents growing up became friends themselves to this day. And now, 20-something years later, those relationships are key parts of their social life. Literally, unbeknownst to them, keeping them all healthier. Because at the end of the day, we humans are social creatures and operate best when we are interacting with people on a consistent yet not overwhelming basis. We're also creatures who require cognitive challenges to preserve cognitive mass. So embracing a life of continuous learning can go an extremely long way for your 5-pound mushy membrane as well. These are just some things to keep in mind when it comes to preserving your vitality over time. And if you think I forgot about the often classified evil social media, I didn't. That's another great area to connect with people and groups. A great place to laugh and learn. However, it's also an exceptionally good place to upregulate the stress response. So use this digital world and its ability to keep us connected for biological good, rather than dysfunctional evil. Something we talk more about in this video here. Oh, and I forgot to mention, get a dog, cat, potbelly pig, herd of baby goats to do yoga with. Because yes, talking and hanging out with your bestie furry friend is good for your well-being too. And speaking of well-being, all of those social warrior hacks and mental stimulation activities will do you a lot less good if your underlying biology is in a state of dysfunction. A state riddled with damage, inflammation, and a functional inability to operate efficiently. In fact, there was a recent study which implicated mitochondria, or what I'd argue the most important piece of biological machinery that we all have, as a main player in hearing loss. Huh, you don't say. Adding that to also suspiciously being at the root of cognitive function, muscle performance, metabolic flexibility, eyesight, and basically every other biological system that we have. Who would have thunk? With the very best ways to improve your mitochondria function being owning your health through lifestyle, or daily badonkadonking, aka exercise, prioritizing real whole foods, getting consistent high quality circadian aligned sleep, managing stress, experiencing more nature, and avoiding everyday toxins. All things, might I add, which also naturally boosts cognitive function and emotional well-being, making it biologically harder to experience dysfunction not only here and now, but over the long run, aka your golden years. Moral of the story being, if you want to live long and finish cognitively strong, stay social, keep your mind stimulated and challenged, protect your sensory organs, ensure your mitochondria are operating efficiently, and commit to owning your health. And if you do, you'll sway your odds, likelihood, and probability of feeling and thinking to your true potential ever in your favor. It's as simple and difficult as that. Oh, and don't forget the dog. Trust me, one of the best happiness potions on the planet. And cognitive challenges. You ever try to get a stubborn, spoiled dog to come inside? Harder than your kid's homework.